Pam, and I would like to welcome you to the Live Authentically show. My team and I help other people step into their authentic realities via a number of different modalities. We have a Facebook group of like minded people committed to spiritual growth and transformation, and you can find us at liveauthentically.today/FB. I also launched my debut book, SOAR, SOAR. It's on Amazon, and it's an experiential spiritual journey and shows how I partnered with the universe to create my new reality. I am super excited that on my show with me today, I have Dr. Stacee. Hey, Dr. Stacee.
Hey, Pam. So glad to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here with me and our audience.
My pleasure. I'm so glad. I'm so grateful to end the work week this way.
Yeah, super excited. So we have lots to talk about today, and super excited to talk about all the work that you do in the world to help people on their journey of healing. But before we do that, I would like to start my show off with the same question that I ask all of my guests. And that question is, how do you live authentically every day?
I love this question because, authenticity is such a decision that has to be made. And I work to always interrogate myself. At the beginning for me is to just level set each day. So I'm very fortunate. I live in a high rise, and my bedroom faces directly east toward Lake Michigan.
Okay.
So the sun rises over the lake, and every day I make a point to start with the blinds opening before I do coffee, before I mess with the dog, anything else. That's the first thing I do, and just survey what's in front of me. And some days it's just a cloudless sky and this big orange herb, how funny, this orange orb that's in the sky, just hovering over the lake. Sometimes there's a lot of our particulates that are changing the colors, and there are clouds, and there's pinks and peaches and mango. And some days it's just a lot of gray and blue that's mixed together, and you can't always differentiate the lake from the sky because of the cloud level. And
Okay.
it's a beautiful thing to meditate on and to just notice and just experience the wonder of. And I find that doing so allows me to be in a space of appreciation before I begin engaging just the details of the world and email and news and other things. It's just
Mhm.
spending a bit of time. It's very it's just a really great way to launch an authentic day.
It sure is. And I love that you make such a simple everyday task very meaningful, and you do it with intention, and you infuse that spirit of appreciation. And that absolutely has a powerful role, plays a powerful role in setting you on the right trajectory for the day, right?
It does. And I think about that's a thing that I often will return to. And I think about just how that plays out, because sometimes during the day there's just those irritations that happen, frankly. There's just this thing that comes up in an email,
Yeah.
this conversation, or just this situation and I'm having to deal with in a classroom, and I just and there's two parts of me. There's the almost immediate, more instinctive response, which is to go into irritation, and what do I and have to deal with this, and get a bit of into sort of a negative self-talk sometimes,
Mhm.
because it's just seeing the stressor and seeing only the irritation, and then going into what I must do. And I guess I should go do this now. I guess I better do that. And anytime I feel myself saying must and better and should, I've now learned to pause and say, "Ooh, wait a second. That's that black and white thinking. Let's go back to the moment that I noticed this morning. Let's go back to the decision that I made this morning, just to embrace this day, and
Mhm.
just to free myself from this and realize, oh, you know what, this isn't this right here seems really so real right now, but
Mhm.
6 months from now I won't remember this stressor.
Right.
it's just not that important. It's just not that big of a deal. It seems like a big irritation, but that's because I'm trying. I would be manifesting it as an irritation, and instead I'm
Mhm.
going to manifest my morning, my sunrise, my ability just to observe out and say, what's really happening here, and if I can do that, then I can start to see, okay, there's nobody on the other end of this thing that's really intentionally doing something aggressive or angry. They're just people doing people things, and
Mhm.
and I get to elect to make that about me or not, or just to accept that it's a people thing. And I'm a people too. These things happen, so I know what stressors are, and I sometimes get. And so I think, why am I going to react to an action instead of just being with it and just accepting it? And so acceptance, I think, is a very real gift that comes from these experiences of just getting better and better at observing and of authenticity setting
Mhm.
with the sunrise over the lake.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. I love that practice that you have. Next, I'd like to dive in deeper around a concept that you've addressed directly so far, and it's something that I talk about a lot too. So far, you've used the word decision twice and the word elect, and it all speaks to this idea of choice, right? This idea that in every single moment, we have the power, we have the autonomy to make a choice for ourselves. And I think so many times, and again, I say this with no judgment, but people don't realize that we have that choice, right? We think, well, this is just the way it is, or life is happening to me, et cetera. We're in that unconscious mode of operation. And I know I was in that mode for years, thinking, well, this is just the way it is. And the way things play out, it's just happenstance. And I just kind of take it as it comes and hope that life goes more or less, well for me. And I didn't realize how incredibly empowered we all are and we all can be if we make those moment to moment choices. So I'd love to hear you talk about that idea of choice, decisions, and how you can make those choices in every moment to shape your current reality and your future in a powerful way.
Well, I really am grateful for this opportunity to ponder and state this, because I was a gender nonconforming kid, and I grew up in South Texas in the 1970s and 80s, and began my transgender journey shortly after high school. Uh,
Okay.
and so that was a very deliberate set of decisions to live authentically, but it was also living in real resistance to a very transphobic culture, a very violent culture sometimes, because I did experience violence. I experienced some real aggression, and the most challenging aspects were in being othered as transgender, not just the things that people did to me, but almost how the messages that became instilled as a result of that.
Mhm.
Because it wasn't just that I heard all the things that people said about me being less than, but somehow I took those in and then amplified them, and really that became my internal chorus uh,
Okay.
that guided me. And so what I had to make the decision to do was to recognize that this was somebody else's burden that was
Mhm.
placed on me,
Mhm.
and that there were lots of things that were in life that were other people's burdens, other ideas about what life was supposed to be. And that
Mhm.
if I could make such a deliberate choice for who I needed to be and to live in my truth as a
Yeah.
transgender woman in my very early 20s, then I could start making other decisions as well, decisions to live where I wanted to live, to pursue the career I wanted to have, to exist in spaces that really work for me, both internal and external, and to really begin freeing myself from these old notions of who I was supposed to be. And the moment I realized that it's not that my function isn't about trying to uh, forge an identity and try and become something, but it was about being able to just move freely through this beautiful space, this universe, and be able to just trust that I have a right to exist, and that others do as well. I found that it really gave me a new lease on life, and it gave
Mhm.
me an ability to really respond very differently with loving kindness to myself,
Mm-hmm.
and with a real appreciation for what's around me. So the choice making comes from a place of choosing to no longer be scripted by my otherness, to no longer live in fear and to craft rules of fear for my life about who I must be and what I should be doing, and instead recognizing that I get to make choices to live free of that. I get to have a voice and to really craft this life because I've got this existence. Well, what do I want to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Who do I want to be in it? How do I want to be in it? How do I want to just really, uh, exist fully in this opportunity to be human in this moment in time? And so doing that, making that as a deliberate decision, it is sometimes more effort than others, uh, but
Mm-hmm.
but in the but it's a daily decision though, and it's a daily decision to recognize and respond to freedom, but that freedom begins in a very important place of realizing that even in a very oppressive world, there is also a chance to live emotionally free of the burden that this society has placed on me.
Beautiful. So,
Yeah.
on your journey to authenticity, your journey to freedom, what were some of the things that you needed to let go of?
I think I needed to let go of the first notion that in order to exist in the world, I needed to do what cisgender women did. And this was a really interesting challenge because when
Mhm.
I first transitioned in the early '90s, when I first transitioned, like I did it more than once, but when I began my transition, let me say,
Mhm.
the dominant psychiatric thought was that in order for a transsexual person to be happy, we needed to now think of ourselves as women, as cisgender women, as people who have been birth assigned women, and so I was really coached to create a backstory for myself of what it was to grow up as a girl, and so that when people might ask, "Oh, did you play basketball in high school?" Because I'm 6 feet tall, that I would
Mhm.
have just a quick response to that, and so it was really about not only this sort of it wasn't just that there were unspoken rules that have existed in, but also in these instances some very spoken ways to try and do it. And so I think for me, I had to overcome the burden of trying to pretend I had a story I didn't, first of all,
Okay. Okay.
and to pretend that a truth that was not mine uh, was real, because it's and I found that by doing so, by being able to show up and really exist in my reality as it is, and to say, no, I'm transgender and I really like this about me. I like this life I've had. I like that I
Mhm.
have a real identification with a larger LGBTQ plus community. I like that I have a history that I do,
Yeah.
and I like the exposure to things. And so, why would I pretend that I have a history I don't?
Mhm.
Uh, and so when I realized that this history that I have is not just valid, but that it's actually been there's been many joys to it. There have been many great things. It really helped. It helped move my freedom along just a little bit more. It helped give me the boost, if you will, to to trust myself more and to
Mhm.
show up more and just to exist more freely. So I think it's that was a big burden, and I think there's been lots, of course, the smaller things to that than that as well, of the what it means to be authentic and to be free, and what and how to choose that, because so often in being a person from a marginalized background, certainly going into the business world and then the academic world, there weren't a lot of other people like me, and in most cases there were none that were visible to me.
Mhm.
So I think about how often I felt like a phony, and I felt like I needed to pretend to have all the answers and to always give confidence and to always be pleasant lest somebody dislike me.
Mhm. Mhm.
because if they disliked me, well, that could feel very almost like an attack. They could become very vicious if they didn't. So it was always about keeping people sort of happy and smiling and being the pleasant one. and
Mhm.
and that feels good if you've got a lot. I've got a naturally pretty optimistic outlook, and I'm sparkly and fun. But what also that meant though was that I had to pretend when I didn't have just a little bit of melancholy, that I wasn't upset by something that had happened in my life or the news, when there was very legitimate grief or
Mhm.
something that had occurred, or even just the disappointment of a plant not surviving a freeze. Well, that's a little bit of a disappointment. So, but you have to I think about, or had to pretend that those things didn't bother me. And so I think the challenge of pretending to be unbothered was just one of the major hurdles that I had in my life.
I love that. Thank you. So now that you're sitting squarely, you're obviously sitting squarely in the center, like smack dab in the center of authenticity. How do you feel? How do you feel in this space of pure authenticity as compared to your prior life, earlier points in your journey where you felt like you were, being held back, weren't able to kind of show your true colors, etc.?
That I feel like, you asked that question, and I felt a breath, and that's because it just feels so like there's almost a tightness in my chest that's a natural response, that it just feels like that's released.
Mhm.
And that's it, there's this constriction that I think is what inauthenticity feels like,
Yeah.
is what it feels like to be scripted and controlled. When that's removed, then that's it just feels so freeing. And I feel, I just noticed my arms just sort of going out like this, and it just embracing, the light and the air in the room, and all around me. And so to sit squarely in the middle of authenticity, and to recognize the the story from the past, I just think I'm just so glad for that. But also I can be grateful for the story that shaped me to be here, because I don't I don't begrudge any parts of this past, and I don't even begrudge people,
Mhm.
from the past. I don't even begrudge my people who tormented me, or any of that kind of stuff, because I have such a different appreciation for humanity. And I was walking down the street the other day on the way to the gym, and was just looking around, and it was a really pretty warmer than normal for May kind of day in Chicago. And people are out and about, and there's people working, and working on cars and delivering things, and it's just a busy, bustling street. And I just thought,
Mhm.
look at all of our humanity, look at all of us just doing us and doing our things, and what this just feels like, just to be amongst this. And it's a very empowering and yet humbling experience, just to embrace and feel embraced by all of
Mhm.
this wonder around me, and that we are all co-creating, we're all engaged in this process.
Right. It really is fascinating. And I wholeheartedly agree with you and have experienced moments like that where you just become an observer and you notice how, the world, everyone in the world works together. And I think too, with all of those experiences where people, cast hate or said unkind words, etc., that, as you know, gives us an opportunity to step into compassion and step into empathy and realize that although they're meeting you with hate, although they're not saying kind words, they're operating from their own respective level of consciousness. They're operating from their own life experiences, right? Their own conditioning. And we can either, again, there we have a choice, right? Do we meet them with hate? Do we retaliate, etc.? Or do we allow them, do we stay firmly affixed where we are and stay in our high vibration, our high energy, and allow them to stretch and grow and meet us where we are? And some may be able to step into that and some may not be able to, but at least we're giving them a glimpse of the light, right? We're giving them an opportunity to awaken. We're showing them a little taste of what it's like to do things differently.
And I think that's the part that really inspires me. And I think, I look at these experiences that and I think about my history, and these encounters in life, and it's almost like a little bit like resistance training, in a way, because I think about how the first time, if you've not worked out, the first time you lift a heavy weight, it's going to really really hurt and it feels
Mhm.
hard, and that's what resistance feels like. But I think, but as you continue to lift that weight, it becomes less burdensome. And so I
Mhm.
think what I have noticed as I've moved along is that, I'm less blown around by just sort of the winds that people throw out there. It's just not really so much of a thing. I believe that each of us has an opportunity to engage in helping repair the world,
Mhm.
helping to really just show up in a very loving way, and a
Mhm.
very truly um, in a truly giving way. I think we each have a real opportunity, and to be able to do something that's transformative and to help others move out of this sort of absolute black and white thinking. It's just as you've said, if we invite people to match us with this,
Mhm.
when we bring ourselves in with our creativity and our authenticity, and our compassion. And I hope that by existing with compassion, that people who maybe are really struggling with it can have just some moment of hope from that,
Right.
and something that really helps them to then have compassion for themselves, and
Mhm.
and really start giving some decision to, well, what do I want? What can I create that's different? And I think that that's possible for even people in very very difficult circumstances.
I agree. And I think oftentimes too, when people are unkind or, aren't meeting us with that compassion, it's more often than not a reflection about what's going on, a reflection on what's going on within, right? And it gives them the opportunity to kind of highlight or illuminate a part of them that needs to be healed. So, and that was another pivotal point on my journey that, it's to not take things personally, right? It's not about us, it's about them. And all we can do is stay firmly affixed, firmly centered, firmly grounded, and aligned with our truth, and let everything else shake out the way that it's going to shake out, right? Let the chips fall where they may elsewhere. But our job, first and foremost, is to stay aligned and to stay connected to our purpose and to live and walk and speak in our truth.
I mean, this is everything, and that's such an important thing, and one of the most valuable lessons of humanity is how not to take somebody else's humanity personally.
Yeah.
I think about, I lived in Massachusetts for several years, and I would be sometimes just stuck in Boston area traffic. So if there's any Boston area listeners, they know what I'm talking about. But I would just be sitting in traffic, and sometimes people would become really angry and aggressive and be cutting somebody off and things like that. And then somebody else would respond to that, and I would see this kind of action. I think, you know, you don't know what that's about. You can't assume that somebody is cutting you off in traffic because they're filled with something about you. It has
Right.
nothing to do with you. They're sure, maybe they're late for work, maybe they have to go to the bathroom, maybe they're just addled because they're worried about their sick mother,
Yeah.
and who's going through something, and they've got,
Right.
people just have their own preoccupations and their own needs. And again, that just is the opportunity to back up and see humanity, and see sitting on this interstate that is sometimes a parking lot, and realizing these are just these are just people. These are just people like me, who all have their own lives and their own stressors, and who are simply trying to do this human thing, which is very difficult. It's hard to be human.
Hmm.
It's hard to being human is just a very very challenging thing, because there's so many parts to overcome, and
Hmm.
it's just a fundamentally different experience. I look at the life of a dog, and I think dogs just live in the moment. They're just in it, and I live with a dog, so I'm very very aware of how his world is. And I think, he doesn't have the cognitive complexity to be sitting there and worrying about, 6 months from now, and
Right.
you know
Right.
uh, and or about, oh, this thing that I did yesterday, I just shouldn't have chewed that pillow. He's never saying that.
Mhm. Right. Right.
He lives free of regrets, he lives free of these things. And I think that's
Yeah.
that's that's the complexity of humanity, is that we have our brains are so amazing that we don't just grieve things that happened yesterday. We grieve actions we took 20 years ago. We feel old experiences of humiliation from
Mhm.
from our childhood. So it's a very, very difficult thing to be human, to be able to surmount that stuff, to be able to not be blown around by it, and to just be able to exist in the universe, and to partner with it, and be loving, and to be able to say, wait a second, there's more here. There's more here than just
Mhm.
my thoughts and my stressors in this moment. And that is such a freeing thing. It's a very And that goes back to this important piece of on choice.
Right, absolutely. This space of authenticity, this is something obviously I feel passionate about. I know you would do as well. And this is what I want for everyone in this world, that they live a deeply fulfilled, authentic life.
Mhm.
What do you say to the person who says, I'm scared to make a change? I'm scared to step into my authenticity, whether regardless of what that is, leaving a relationship that's past its expiration date, leaving a job that they're unhappy in, leaving moving, getting up and moving across the country, whatever it is. What do you say to the person who's kind of on the edge of the diving board, kind of, knees shaking, they're scared to take that leap?
I appreciate this, because and again, this is one of the things I also talk about in my book, because it's part of healing. Otherness is healing ourselves, our notions of absolute thinking.
Mhm.
People are so oftentimes they create this fearful situation because they suddenly are projecting all kinds of realities that are going to happen. If I do this, it's going to have this major effect, and it's going to do this and do this and do this. And so people think in some absolute terms. And so the thing I invite people to do is to look at the first small change that can be made. What's the first step in moving you toward something that's going to be a better situation? And look as well over your life. And I think sometimes people forget these things. We're very selective historians about our own experiences, and
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
oftentimes forget all of the strength, all of the resiliency, all of the important authentic decisions that we made along the way. Going back to very early decisions that people made, maybe in school, to say, Mom, I don't want to play the clarinet. I want to play the trumpet.
Mhm.
I mean, it seems small by comparison, but that was a big decision probably at the time.
Mhm.
And if we can look at that and see the people who've all been decision makers our whole life, then we can start to really look at that and say, and it was scary, and I approached it, and then what happened afterwards? Well, I got to play this, and maybe I found out I didn't like it, but at least I gave myself a shot before I moved on to this next thing. Or maybe they loved it. But that's the whole thing. It's that we have to recognize that just the existence that we've had has been one of risks, and that we open ourselves up for possibilities when we're willing to err on the side of happiness. And if the reality I look at and say, if I don't do anything to change my circumstances over the next 5 years, and I can look at the last several and say and see the melancholy that I've been in, the
Mhm.
fact that my creativity has felt sapped, that
Mhm.
I've struggled and have moved into trying to fill a void by shopping or eating or whatever it is we do,
Yep.
then I can trust that even if I have to make a decision that's going to immediately be difficult, it's going to offer some hard or create some hardship for me in the very near future. The possibility is that I might have just an ounce more of joy. And isn't it worth it to make a change from this melancholy experience if it can give me just the possibility of glimpsing joy a little bit more frequently than I do now? And if we can do that, and if we can just think about this in small terms and not these absolute big things and catastrophic ways, and oh my gosh, if I do this, the world is just going to change. No, I can make a change, and I've done so before, and I can start moving myself toward that. And then once we start doing that, once we start realizing what's possible, and doing it incrementally, then we start looking at this and saying, well, wait a second, it's maybe this is possible. Maybe I can do this. Maybe there's, oh, you know what? It's wow, this is a thing. Because one thing I do find, I'm sure you do as well, is that when we trust the universe and say, this is what I know that I need, the universe magically somehow just brings this thing
Yeah.
up that says,
Yeah.
oh, wait a second, you needed, oh, you needed to earn a little extra income.
Mhm.
Hey, funny thing, I've got a job that you can do from home,
Mhm.
that you're actually really skilled for, and here I am just sitting in LinkedIn waiting for you.
Yep. Yep. And I love how in your reflection on that, you use the word trust. And that's where I was going to go next. I was going to say, the trust, being able to trust and have faith and surrender is such a huge piece of this. And know that, we don't have to have it all figured out right now, right? When you think, how am I going to go from point A to, from where I am now to completely transforming and changing my reality? You don't need to worry about what the path looks like. The universe will figure that out. The universe will illuminate that one step at a time. All we need to do is show up. Our job is, it's not easy, but we can simplify it, and we can say, you know what, all I need to do is show up today with an open mind and an open heart, and just be in the state of allowing, and in the state of receiving, and in the state of surrendering, and really allowing let the universe figure out the details, right, like just show up, let the universe figure out the how and the when and the timing and all of that. And our job is simple. We just need to show up with an open heart, open mind, and just pure love, and amazingness happens, right? I mean, it's happened in your life, it's happened in my life. And this is truly, I mean, this is again what I want for everyone. So would love to hear your reflections a little bit on how faith and trust and surrender has been part of your journey.
Well, one of the first things I had to do was to recognize that what I thought about surrendering, that sounds like such a bad word based on what we're taught, because we grow up in such an adverse society that the word surrender has such a negative connotation in most people's beliefs. We see surrendering as what the defeated does. That's,
Yeah.
and we think about it in sort of war types of things. And
Yeah.
so,
Giving up, right.
right,
Hmm.
it is a giving up. It's giving up, and sometimes and then seems to be admitting that we were wrong about things, and that there's just a lot of negative things. But when we realize that surrendering is saying, i no longer I no longer am going to try and control things. I'm no longer going to try and be the architect of somebody else's life, for example. I'm no longer going to control or try to control someone else's drinking, someone else's beliefs. I'm not going to try and do this anymore. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to give in to the notion that I'm supposed to be just overworked to the point of exhaustion. That's my old notion. I'm going to surrender that. And when I think about surrender, it almost, the sense I get, the body sense I get of it is just laying down. It's almost, I get a mental picture of this as surrender, as I'm just saying, you know what, I'm going to lay right here on this beach with this ocean around me and this warm sand, and just experience the sun and the ocean and the air around me, and notice warmth on my body. And that's what surrender means. It's a very it's a very important experience of releasing all that we believe about who we've had to be. And so, uh, the thing I always like to do is, when I'm recognizing a struggle with surrender, that I sometimes just have a moment, and I take my breath, and I just ask, I say, if there was just a sliver of insight that can be provided to me right now by the universe, what might that be? What's the insight that I'm perhaps needing to have? And sometimes it's just something very, very simple, and most times it's very simple, and it's the sometimes it's just, okay, the next thing I need to do is to go ahead and just fix breakfast. That's what I need
Hmm.
to do, and
Hmm.
just fix breakfast, and just enjoy the process, and just notice how a cast iron skillet feels, and sort of regain the tactile experiences.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's really a moment of just spending additional time just breathing and just noticing air and energy. And sometimes it is a deliberate aha of, you know what, I I think I'm going to get in touch with so and so. I'm, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call my good girlfriend that I haven't spoken to in a little bit because I just want to hear her voice. And not that I'm trying to call her with a problem. I'm just calling because this is what I'm needing. Sometimes I just need to connect. And I think that that's that kind of thing is that when we learn how to do it and just to be able to ask, it's a funny thing that the answer will come to us. And suddenly it's just, and being able to trust that that's what surrendering is. It's not to
Mhm.
say, oh, I don't want to call her right now. I bet she's busy with the kids. I bet she's got this going on. Oh, you know what? I don't need to mess with breakfast right now. I've
Mhm.
got these other things to do. Let me finish emails first. It's some of those kinds of things. We surrendering means I've asked for what I've needed. I've put intention toward that, and now I'm going to surrender and allow myself just to receive what I receive.
I love that. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've got just a couple minutes before we wrap up. And what I'd like to do next is I'd like to give you carte blanche for a couple of minutes to freeform and talk about whatever you would like to talk about, whether it's another powerful message, whether you'd like to share more about the work that you do in the world, your book, etc. So I'll just open it up to you for a couple minutes to speak about what you're inspired to speak about.
Oh, well, thank you for offering that. So the exciting thing that's of course happening for me right now is that I just published the Healing Otherness Handbook. Uh,
Congratulations.
thank you very much. So it was this was 10 years in the making, and you think that's not a lot for 10 years in the making. 10 years in the making because I just think it takes a lot to conceptualize and to write about self-help. I've been a therapist for many years. I've worked with
Mhm.
a lot of trauma, but to now help people go through these experiences, people who've been cast out and been made to feel different and other for whatever those reasons were, whatever somebody else decided about this person was less than.
Mhm.
Whether it's something big and systemic, certainly racism and homophobia, transphobia, body fat shaming. There's all kinds of things like that that people have had experiences with that are enormously painful in
Mhm.
their lives, and that instilled these messages like we were speaking about, instilled so many negative beliefs in us. And so what I've created was a book that helped people to not only recognize where these negative otherness messages came from, but how we've really reinforced them, how we've done this heavy lifting of
Mhm.
keeping it going, and then giving people tools to transform that. And so, and I offer four tools: compassion, creativity, clarity, and sass. So, clarity is just meditating on an experience. Compassion is the forgiveness of ourselves and giving love back to ourselves, even for moments that we have regretted, things that we did in our places of pain, by using creativity as a means to transform it, and then sass as those first steps, like you said, the sort of that point where we're quivering at the diving board. Sass is trusting in ourselves and the ability to talk back to all of that negative self-talk that says we can't, and instead moving into I can and I deserve, and this is my moment, and being able to just dive into freedom. And that's what I really guide people to do in this book, from many different sets of experiences of otherness. So it's just been a joy. It's been a joy to see how the book has been received as well.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you so
And
much.
you're welcome. And if people would like to get in contact with you directly, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best to contact me through my website. It's drstacee.com. That's drstacee.com. And I've got a contact page. You can read about the work I do, the presentations I give, the workshops, and I'm happy to hear from anybody who's listened and has enjoyed our conversation today.
Excellent. Well, I am absolutely one of those people who has thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for being here. It's been an honor to have you here, and I really appreciate being able to share this time and space with you today. So thank you very much.
You've honored me with it. Thank you so much for creating the space for us.
You're welcome. And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. As you know by now, I believe that time is a choice. And I am grateful that you've carved time out of your day to be here to listen to all of the wisdom that Dr. Stacee has shared with us today. Thank you, everyone, and have an amazing day.